Hey guys, Marcello here. Today we're going to be doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Sorry for the background. We're here in Mexico City doing a 1 week intensive training for all of our traders, a day trading academy. And the room we just couldn't engineer, so sorry for the background. I literally have the camera sitting on top of the bed. And for those of you guys that are listening on the podcast, remember that you could always go to YouTube, just search for, Marcello Arrambide or Day Trading Academy, and it should come up for you guys. Overall, this week we had a situation where there was a huge amount of fear for this Evergrande situation. If you guys remember last week, I talked about how Evergrande is the largest property developer in China, and they essentially were going to go bankrupt. So Monday, we had that big crash on the downside. Thankfully, we recovered quite a bit, and China did report that they're going to go ahead and inject, billions of dollars into the financial system and also essentially bail out Evergrande. So the whole fear of a crisis, the world is going to end like 2009, has been kind of put on the shelf for now due to the fact that essentially that's kind of been washed over, or let's say the problem has been fixed, right? Overall, for the week, the U.S. markets, they're very, very small numbers on the positive side. 0.61 for the Dow, 0.50% for the S&P 500, and then 0.02% for the NASDAQ. In overseas market news, the European markets are also mostly higher for the week. Obviously, most markets on Monday took a big dive, but obviously after the news that they were going to go ahead and bail out Evergrande, then they started recovering because obviously everything is fine. Everything is fine. Other than that, Latin American markets mostly lower as well, with Canada being, I don't have the Canada numbers listed here, unfortunately, but they're probably going to be a little bit negative. Africa and the Middle East, Egypt was the biggest loser there at negative 3.33%. And then in the far, far east, we had Hong Kong with the biggest loser at negative 3.05% due to the fact of this Evergrande situation. Their stocks is actually on the Hong Kong exchange, and their stock has gone down about 85% since this whole debacle actually started. Other than that, lots of news in crypto news and the whole Bitcoin space. Coinbase, which is the largest crypto exchange in the United States. If you guys remember, there was a little bit of a spat, let's say, between them and the SEC. They wanted to launch a lending product where they were going to lend money essentially in crypto, and the SEC obviously didn't want to allow that. Probably because obviously that goes against the establishment, right? And so now Coinbase has officially announced that they're not going to launch their lending product. And there should be kind of a cautious tale of the fact that the regulators aren't going to allow kind of the crypto space to move into, let's say, the banking world, right? Because obviously when you're lending money and those kinds of things, they obviously are getting into the bank's businesses. And that's what I mean by kind of going against the establishment, so to speak. Other than that, we had a situation where Christine Lagarde, which is the president of the ECB, the European Central Bank, talking about another woman that's part of the establishment. She was saying that you should be cautious about cryptos because they're in speculative bubbles, including, Dogecoin. She mentioned Ethereum and Cardano and all these altcoins. And she also said that they are all highly speculative assets. So again, just goes to show you that this is what I always kind of talked about in the beginning, right? Where I think Bitcoin can still exist. They might not necessarily shut it down completely unless, for example, Bitcoin and cryptos turn into money. And with Coinbase trying to go and lend money and kind of creeping into the banking world, obviously the establishment isn't going to allow that to happen, right? Other than that, the U.S. has quietly passed a bill amendment to authorizing the central bank digital currency. So it looks like the government coin around the world is on its way. If you guys don't remember, a while ago I talked about how the European Central Bank actually registered a trademark for the digital euro. So these government coins are coming. This is what I told you guys from the very beginning that was going to happen, if you guys remember. And in addition to that, Chile is also opening up the door to digital payments and also regulating the crypto space with some of the new laws and amendments that they're going to pass through their government as well. Overall, for the week, Bitcoin lower, 12.41%. And this has to do with the fact that China has seemed to have banned again. They officially made cryptos and mining and everything, quote unquote, illegal, even though they kind of seem like every few months they go in and pass a law or they try to ban it or prohibit it, right? And so that's the main reason why we had the huge downturn this week. It's just under 42,000 now, Bitcoin. Commodities, Brent crude hit nearly a 3-year high on Thursday. Both U.S. crude and also international Brent went up quite a bit, over U.S. crude 2.79%, while Brent was 3.65%. So they keep on creeping up, especially with this inflation. And then precious metals, we had a bit of a surge in the U.S. dollar. And if you guys don't know, most commodities in the world, oil, cotton, rice, all physical commodities are listed in dollars. So whenever we have a situation where the dollar actually goes up, there's selling pressure in a lot of these markets, especially the commodities markets, and that includes precious metals, for example. So precious metals for the week, gold went down 0.20% to a little bit under 1,750, while silver went up 0.13% to 22.49. Financial and banking news, the U.S. federal government ended the quarter two owing $28.5 trillion in debt. We're now at 130% of the size of the economy. And if you guys don't know, once you hit about 100% of debt, based on the size of your economy, it's called the debt to GDP ratio. That's when a lot of the problems start. And this was part of the problems, for example, that we had in the 2009 crisis where, countries like Italy and Spain and Ireland all had these huge debt loads and they just couldn't service that debt anymore. The U.S. is starting to get into that situation, and that increase that we had in the debt of 9.6% is the largest percent gain in the second quarter since the second quarter of 2020, when obviously we had the stimulus because of the whole situation with the pandemic. And so, not good. It's not going to end well. Prepare yourselves, because I think the preppers at the end of the day were right. Other than that, one of the dominant Euro consumer firms since 2015 called Revolut, which are valued at about $33 billion. They're going to announce this week that they have approved for a broker-dealer license in the United States to be able to compete directly with the great scam that is Robinhood, that offers trades for free. They're also going to go ahead and offer trades for free as well. But always remember that it's not really free, and you actually end up paying more because it's free. Nothing's free in life, right? So I just hate Robinhood because they act like they're trying to help people with the stock market, and you can trade for free. There's no cost, and at the end of the day, they're literally just raping the little guy. It ends up costing you more. So it looks like we have more people that are jumping into the space, because at the end of the day, I do think that Robinhood essentially destroyed the industry with what they did with the free trades. Other than that, Wednesday, Evergrande negotiated a deal with bondholders to be able to go ahead and settle their payments in the domestic bonds. Obviously, again, this is what I explained in the beginning, how we averted the whole situation with the new crisis like in 2009, because a lot of analysts and financial people were talking about how this could have spread throughout the entire financial system. And other than that, the Chinese government injected $14 billion into the banking system to be able to go ahead and help sue the investor concerns in regards to that situation. Other than that, they also decided to pay a lot of their debts with real estate, which is ironic to say the least. Norway's central bank on Thursday became the first bank to increase interest rates. They went from 0 to 0.25. They also said that they'll probably have to re-up. They'll increase them again, most likely in December of 2022. This December in 2021. And Norway's currency obviously rallied quite a bit. When they raise the interest rates, obviously people, they take their money out of other currencies because they're not paying as much interest. And then they move the money into the currency where the interest rates are higher because they get a better return on their money. Right? So the Norwegian currency obviously surged against the dollar and even the euro. U.S. households had another significant jump in net worth, according to the Fed report. It increased 19.6%. This obviously has to do with the huge increase with stock market, record high after record high, in addition to the huge surge in the real estate prices as well. Now, remember that the majority of the wealth in the U.S. is the stock market and real estate. And if you guys don't understand why everything's going up, it has a lot to do with the monetary policy in the United States. 40% of the dollars that they have injected into the system since COVID didn't exist before COVID. So because of the pandemic, they went in and just poof, printed more money. They just created it out of thin air and they injected it into the financial system. So if they increase the money supply by 40%, that means that all other assets have to increase as well. Because obviously if the money supply goes up by 40%, if you guys see, that's part of the reason why houses have gone up, for example, by 30% since the last year. And that's part of the reason as well why we have this huge inflation problem, which is just temporary. Sarcasm, of course. In political news, Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau won by a slim victory. He went ahead and launched new elections 2 years early on the confidence that he was able to handle the COVID situation in a good way. What he wanted to do is be able to get a majority government, which he did not get. So even though he did land the re-election, he still has a minority government and he has to work with some of the other parties that are in government to be able to go ahead and get his agenda forward. And economic news, data from Yelp. Yelp, if you guys know, is the online firm that provides reviews and all different kinds of things online. They said that 60% of the companies that closed during COVID have permanently closed. And this, at the end of the day, in my view, is kind of what they want. And this is a big problem for the economy because in the US, same thing like Germany, for example, which is the fourth largest economy in the world, what actually moves the economy is small business. 50% of the jobs in the United States are small business. And so when we have a situation where a lot of these small businesses are being shut down, obviously that affects quite a bit the overall economic situation, overall. And so in my view, this is kind of what they want because they don't want you to have your independence. They don't want you to be able to live on your own. We have the situation, for example, with the mandates for I don't want to say it here on video, but, if we're getting to the point now where you're not going to be able to have a job unless you take, and if you have your own business or you have a way to generate income, then if you're against that, for example, right, it's whatever your decision is, then you wouldn't have to do that. And so what they want essentially is to have you be at a job, work for a corporation, because that's how they can control everybody. That's kind of the way that I view things. Other than that, in corporate news, most stocks of companies went down on Monday. Obviously, the situation with the Evergrande fears. We have the situation as well where Biden announced that previous denied travelers is not the right way to say it. Previous travelers that were denied entry into the U.S., that were barred from entry, Europe, the UK, China, for example, are going to be able to come into the United States starting November 1st, as long as they have the COVID vaccine. That obviously helped a lot of the airline companies because that means that a lot more air travel is going to be able to happen as well. A lot more tourists of the US. If you guys don't remember, if I'm not mistaken, I believe US was the third most visited country in the world after France and Spain. And so obviously it's going to help tourism as well. And in addition to that, shares of Nike dropped on Friday after they're saying that the global supply chain congestion is starting to affect their business a lot more than they had expected. One of the busiest ports in the United States, which is the port in Los Angeles, is actually thinking about working 24 hours a day to be able to ease some of the congestion, because right now they have a record number of ships that are just sitting off the coast of California just waiting to dock to be able to go ahead and get the products off. Other than that, in international events, the Spanish-owned Canary Islands' first volcanic eruption in 50 years started on Sunday. Forced evacuation of about 5,000 people and 500 tourists. If I'm not mistaken, the number I read was about 180 hectares of land has been destroyed, over 100 homes because of the lava. And the Canary Islands, that specific island, could be a big problem because if in the 1950s, when we had that big explosion of the volcano, it actually caused a crack on the top ridge of the mountain. And so if we have a situation where that happens again, or we have a very strong eruption or earthquake, for example, that entire side of the volcano can come down and cause a huge tsunami, which is hundreds of feet high. So that's, obviously something that they're looking at. And other than that, an unusual facts this week, new guild of artists from Nigeria, Benin City, offered to donate artworks to the museum, the British Museum in London, to be able to go ahead and return the original artifacts that they took from the royal court in 1897. Obviously, they want to be able to just go ahead and give them new artwork so they can return the original ones back to Nigeria. And potential lurch to the political left in Germany's election on Sunday, which it was the Sunday that you guys are watching this video since I'm recording on Saturday, scaring millions of Germans because obviously they view that if the center-left Social Democrats come into power, they're going to reintroduce the wealth tax, tightening of inheritance tax, and so they're all getting their money out of Germany and putting it into Switzerland to be able to go ahead and avoid all the increase in taxes. And the natural disasters this week, Lake Powell Dam, which is the second largest dam in the United States, has had such low water because of the drought that they're expecting that they're going to stop generating electricity in June of 2022, which is pretty serious. Obviously, we had the explosion in the Canary Islands, which you're saying could get worse. Powerful explosion in the Fuego volcano in Guatemala. Some of the people that I follow are saying that due to the activity, we're going to see a significant amount of activity in earthquakes and or volcanoes in the next 2 months in some of the chains of volcanoes in South America. And so there's basically 3 clusters. There's one down in the deep south, for example, in Chile and Chile and Argentina. You have another kind of cluster in the northern part between Ecuador and Colombia, and then another one kind of in the middle where about Peru and Chile is at. So we'll see if that actually happens. And they found in the biblical story of Sodom and Gomorrah, they found a space rock destroyed a city in the Middle East, which they're saying gave rise to that legend of why God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So they found records of that in the Middle East. In addition to that, new science study shows cooling effect of rare large eruptions can increase when the atmosphere warms. So we have a situation now where the whole Earth has been warming, especially since, for example, the Ice Age, right? 12,000 years ago, all of Canada and most of North America, from Minneapolis north, was under literally, miles of ice, in addition to Europe. Obviously, we didn't use carbon or oil, so it's kind of weird how the Earth warmed up without us using oil, but that's another question for another day. But essentially what they're saying is because the atmosphere is getting warmer now, this can cause a lot of these volcanic eruptions to actually happen, which affect global temperature. And 1,815, Mount Tambora in Indonesia, exploded so much plume, the ash plume that happens with volcanoes, into the air that the next year, they call it the year without a summer, because there was so much of that ash that covered the earth that it literally stopped the sun from coming in, so they couldn't grow crops. And in 1991, Mount Minatobo from the Philippines cooled the climate for 3 years. So they're saying that there's indications now, they found proof that because the earth is warming, like it is now, that we could have a lot more of these effects around the world with these volcanoes, which is not bueno. And new vents also have opened up in Cumbre Vieja volcano on the Canary Islands, unfortunately. So hopefully we don't get a huge tsunami like in the movie 2012 hitting the east coast of the United States. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.